So you're just playing along, you know, whatever.
It's going fantastic. We're having an excellent turnout and a lot of positive feedback. Man, I tell you what, just because there's no other shows like this in Oklahoma, I feel like there's a lot of Oklahoma artists. I mean, because the city is full of talent. I mean, there are so many talented, I mean, just on the street alone, if you go in and like look in the windows at the different galleries, you're gonna see amazing people that don't seem to have a voice. And for some reason, I don't understand why that it feels like we just have a tendency to stick with what we know here and don't go beyond that. And there is so much potential. That's the whole point of art, is to like push these boundaries and really, I mean, kind of open people's eyes to what we do. And there's so many people with a distinct voice, a distinct point of view that's truly unique to them, and they never get heard. And I guess one of the reasons why I did this show was to show people that they can do this. That I don't care if it's like renting out a gallery for the evening or just hanging up some paintings in your garage and playing your music really, really loud and just see who shows up, to see what's going on. You know, just get out there and do it. Show people what you can do, you know, and hopefully this will serve as, I don't know, kind of a wake-up call to a lot of people who feel like, you know, they can't make it unless they go before like a committee to see if they're good enough to show in a show. I'm telling you right now, you are good enough. You know, you are good enough for people to come up and see your work and, you know, get something out of it. I mean, that's the thing that's so great about art, is the fact that it's so subjective, you know, yet I feel like, I don't know if it's, you know, people think, oh, well, you know, this isn't good enough to be over here, or this isn't good enough to be over here. You know, it's stupid. That's irrelevant. You know, you are relevant. You need to be showing your stuff. You need to be down here with me showing your stuff. You know, I don't care what it takes. Just do it. It's easy. It's easy. You know, that's all. It takes a while. Usually I use like a number 30 brush on it, which is pretty small. And just to get every ounce of it covered and done in fine detail. I'm working on one right now. I've been working on it for 2 years now. It's called Metal Sushi. Hopefully I'll be premiering it in the next, you know, couple months. It's a 6-foot canvas. It's all about walking from the darkness into the light. You know, it concerns Apollo and Artemis. It concerns life and death. It concerns death and rebirth and apotheosis. And a healthy dose of H.P. Lovecraft tossed in there too. Basically what I do is I come up with a concept and I start trolling the internet. You know, I go through Tumblrs, I go through people's vacation photos, I go through Chinese Vogue, you know. This last one I'm using, you know, temples from Thailand. I'm using Cthulhu heads from Randy Bowen model kits. I'm using, you know, models from you know, Vogue Home International. I'm using, you know, fetish photos from weird octopi websites. You know, it's basically, if I see something and it strikes me, I hang on to it. And I want to use that and incorporate it into my newest pieces. And basically what I do is I just go and I've got just huge files upon files upon files upon random things that have, you know, struck me as being different, as being weird, as being, you know, things I can't look away from. And I hang on to those and I try and incorporate those into my paintings, and using the whole, you know, 7 steps of alchemical transformative process. You know, I find them, I break them down, I refine them, I reuse them, and finally I coagulate them into something that's completely separate from what they were originally intended for, that fits so perfectly well. Go right on the record right now saying Adam Warlock. To me, Strange Tales 178 by Jim Starlin was probably the most influential comic on me as a kid. Not only as a kid, but just on the industry in general. Basically, he took the underground and brought it to the foreground. You know, basically he took what Roy Thomas and Gil Kane did in trying to establish the story of Christ in the Marvel Universe, i.e. via, you know, movies like Godspell, you know, or Jesus Christ Superstar, and mixed it with you know, Ziggy Stardust, and created this amazing character. But they only took it so far. What Jim Starlin did was ask the question, hey, what happens to Jesus after he ascends? You know, after he flies into space? Well, what happens is he comes back 5,000 years in the future and finds out what the Catholic Church did with his image, and how he's become this huge tyrant and can't understand that, hey, you know, this wasn't what I was trying to do. He's become this like all-powerful, all-knowing, you know, Wizard of Oz type, you know, just megalith. And how he deals with that fact, you know, that of what people do, take your original message and pervert it to their own uses, and what that does, you know, to you as an entity. It's just amazing. And not to mention the art. I mean, the story, Starlin. The art, Starlin. The inking, Starlin. The coloring, sometimes Starlin. But it's just absolutely brilliant. You can't do better than Strange Tales 178, 179, and especially 180, where Warlock faces the Inquisition. It is absolutely, absolutely amazing. I love Bronze Age Marvel, Silver Age DC. I love the mid-'80s independent Pacific First. All these different, you know, comic companies that sprung out of that. I love Howard Chaykin, American Flag, Times Square is absolutely brilliant. I mean, taking comic book sensibilities and mixing them with, you know, Damon Runyon is just genius. You know, I love the pre-Vertigo, you know, Hellblazer, Doom Patrol by Grant Morrison, Shade the Changing Man by Peter Milligan. I mean, all the stuff that came out by Marvel around that time too. I mean, everybody talks about Alan Moore this or Frank Miller that. They're always forgetting about J.M. DeMatteis. I mean, he did more for comic books. I mean, think about it. Craven's Last Hunt, you know, Blood from Epic. That crazy, I mean, Keith Giffen, and you know, Keith Giffen, like his most cubist, weirdest story that he did, that 4-issue Dr. Fate miniseries, was absolutely brilliant. I love, you know, the early Vertigo stuff, Enigma by Pete Milligan. You know, anything by Ted McKeever, Plastic Forks, pure genius. Eddie Current. You know, it's all told in a 12-issue storyline that documents, you know, the 12 hours that this, you know, escaping from a lunatic asylum is on the loose in his, you know, superhero suit that he got out of the back of a magazine. I mean, it's just good stuff. You know, I'm a huge fan of Grant Morrison, especially early to mid Grant Morrison. I love The Invisibles. You know, when it came out, I mean, you didn't just read The Invisibles, you lived The Invisibles. I mean, really looking at the world now and looking at it, The Invisibles, you know, post-90s, he was just, I mean, just as on track now as, say, Howard Chaykin was with American Flag, or, you know, Philip K. Dick was with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I mean, just absolutely brilliant stuff. You know, loved his run on X-Men. I mean, the fact that our RNA was the villain of the piece was just, you know, explains everything. You know, showed that you know, Magneto was no longer necessary. You know, and of course, you know, you got to go back to the Marvel regime and hey, we can't, you know, violate these time-honored characters who we can still make money on. But hey, you know, he gave it a shot. You know, and, you know, followed by Joss Whedon's run on the X-Men, which was just his genius. You know, turning Kitty Pryde into a Christ figure was just, you know, awesome. I mean, anybody who read the X-Men in the 80s loves Kitty Pryde. You know, but really, what I'm reading now, the last truly great thing I read was Casanova by Matt Fraction. You know, basically taking everything I loved as a child and distilling it into a single story. I mean, you've got elements of Johnny Quest, Danger Diabolic, Jerry Cornelius stories by Michael Moorcock. I mean, once again, referencing American Flag by Howard Chaykin. I mean, it's just so good. And Gabriel Bond, the art, is just, you know, immense. You know, not even just to support me, but just to support artists in general, man. Come down, you know, to the Plaza, go to the Paseo, you know, and even though it sounded like I was ragging on IEO earlier, I really wasn't. Go to IEO, there's fantastic artists there. I mean, there is so much life and art in the city that people just don't see. I mean, it's like a good restaurant, you know? You know, it's like you feel like, oh, hey, you know, I can't find any decent Chinese somewhere. And then you stumble across a Grand House, or a Pho Quang, or a Fung's. I mean, and you realize, you know, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't there all along.